Hello again, and welcome back to another video build. This time around, we're painting Rogue, as she is portrayed from this iconic scene in the Savage Land. And we hope you enjoy it.
You had me falling so hard, baby, Yeah, now I get it, you got heads turning, and you don't even...
This will be all about how we painted this amazing figurine. And we'll be starting off with a fully prepared resin 3D print. But just cause I know you'll be having a lot of questions about it, here is a quick recap of how we got to this point. We bought this model from an amazing designer on the CGTrader site, and you'll find the link, as well as anything else you might be wondering about, in the description. The model was sliced in Cheetah Box Pro, and the print configurations are pretty much left as a default. But when it comes down to hollowing out the larger pieces, I really do prefer to have the walls pretty thick. It just makes everything more solid. It's a big quarter scale figurine, so we printed some of the parts on the Saturn, while the bigger things were printed on the Jupiter. As I remove the flex plate, I like to leave the whole thing to just drip off for quite some time. This makes it a lot cleaner to begin with, before I drop it in the ultrasonic cleaner. I like to keep it close to about 40 degrees, cause this seems to be a good temperature, as it lets you easily peel off the supports. Once everything is fully cured, we give them a good coat of some filler primer. Just a bit of sanding to get it all perfect. And it's always a good idea to test fit the pieces. In this case, there was an issue with one of the arms not fitting into the headpiece correctly, but that's nothing a Dremel can't easily fix. Which brings us all the way back to this point, the paint job. And with a marvelous model like this, you can't really go wrong. We'll start off by painting in all the flesh tones. And just like in our last video, we showed you a really simple way to paint the flesh on your figurines by simply using 3 shades of color. I'll be using almost the same approach this time. But in this specific scene with Rogue in the Savage Land, I'm kind of imagining something of a sunset on a tropical beach somewhere. So my goal was to give her a warm golden suntan. That's why I'll be adding a dark cadmium red and some ochre yellow to the mix. Now this might surprise you, but I started with applying the highlights as a base coat. Now there are reasons for that, and I can better explain it later on, as you'll be able to see the results. Then I used the warm yellow color mix, mainly to lock in where I wanted the highlights and the shadows, but also to give everything a slightly warmer color tone. It's about the same way as I would go about doing a rough sketch on a blank canvas, sort of mapping out the terrain a bit. Then lowering the air pressure with a dark reddish brown color, I applied some freckling. How much air pressure to use? Well, I would say that depends on the thickness of your paint. Just make sure to do a bit of testing on the back of your hand, and you'll get it just the way you want it. From this point on, I only used the yellow and reddish brown colors I mixed up. They are all pretty heavily thinned out, making them almost transparent. Applying the paint is all about being patient and slowly building up the shadow layers. It's all pretty much intuitive, just have some fun with the airbrush. Maybe go back and forth between the colors, and definitely make sure you work on all the parts in tandem, or you might end up with a torso that doesn't match the legs at all. So far, I believe I ended up with a really golden, warm suntan. Now, you might think it doesn't look quite right yet, maybe too much red. But you see, the one thing you always have to keep at the back of your mind when going through the painting process is how will the different colors affect each other. The outfit will be in yellow, orange, green and blue colors, which will probably make her skin really pop But as for the beautiful dark brown hair, that will surely lighten her skin tone a bit. The top is usually portrayed in a bright yellow, but I went with a warm orange. And for the highlights, I used a bright yellow. For the second layer of the outfit, I used a range of green colors, a cold green with blue in it for the shadows, to a very yellowish green for the highlights. Now don't mistake the green liquid masking for the color I'm applying. And it's always hard to tell with all the masking tape and such, but once all that is peeled away again, I would say we're on the right track for creating a tropical sunset in the Savage Land. I didn't talk about the masking previously, cause honestly, I find it to be the most boring thing to do on any project. For when it comes to painting her legs, the clothing is mostly folded tightly along her skin, so I chose to start off with painting all the edges. And that is all about getting a clean, crisp line between the parts. So when it comes down to applying the masking, I can overlap the edges a bit, making the whole process go a lot faster. And then everything gets airbrushed the same way as previously. I believe it's a good choice to make it a habit of comparing all the different parts along the way, making sure everything has the same expression. The green glove has been given a coat of some matte varnish, which of course deepens the color and makes it a bit more saturated. With the masking peeled off, all the edges looks to have turned out really clean. But to make the clothing look even more grounded, or rather folded tightly close to her skin, I like to apply some brown wash ink. It is just a thin line that is equally applied on the skin and the clothing. From the highlighted base color we started with, I left her signature white bangs just as is. The hair was a total maze of places to put in shadows and highlights. So starting off with a dark reddish brown color, I applied a total of 6 different shades, going all the way up to a bright yellow for the highlights. At the moment, I know it looks a little greenish blonde, but once I tint everything with some red and dark brown wash inks, it will tie it all together nicely. The wavy hair on this model was truly beautiful, and it was actually the most fun part to airbrush so far. As we all know, painting a figurine and making it hopefully look really great depends a lot of succeeding with one important thing, the face. Using some thinned out red ink, I start by painting the lips. The upper lip usually has a more defined edge, while the lower lip is more of a gradient toward our skin tones. I use the same red ink on the eyes. This will give the inner parts of the eyelids a more natural fleshy look. The ink is very transparent, so I can easily go back and forth between the different details, gradually building up the shadows and all the different details on the face. For the sclera, I'm using a light grey color with just a hint of yellow in the mix. I never paint it all the way out to the edges of the eyelids, because I believe this way just looks better, and the eye sort of settles in more naturally. To go even darker on the eyelashes, I use some darker ink with just a drop of some opaque black paint in it. In general, I believe using thinned out paints or inks is a really good way to slowly build up to the darker colors. It gives you a lot of control over the whole process. As I paint in the headband and the scarf, the only thing left was to paint her green eyes. To lock in the size and position, I simply used some green candy ink. And again, simply applying it in layers, slightly darker with each application, making sure I get the size, shape and position just right. Then I paint in some thin green lines from the center and outward, from a dark to a bright green color, finishing it all off with a black pupil and some glossy varnish. All that remains now are all those small details. And of course, some of her accessories. With all the details and accessories fully painted, there was only one thing left. Now, I could have just painted the base as is, but for someone who read the comic the same week it came out and totally fell in love with Rogue on page 19. So, I made some changes. I know some of you don't like it when I skip over the full process, but as not to make this video too long, we decided to put this in a separate video that's coming out, along with some helpful ways to elevate your display base. But as for this build, all that was left now was to assemble the figurine. And I do believe that was the last thing I did on this prop build.
So cliche, I see the sparks you throw my way. I know your name is written on everyone's mind. Your whole show is captivating me, but don't think that I can see right through that disguise. But when you got close to me, you had me falling so hard, baby, yeah, now I get it, you got heads turning, and you don't even try. Well, would you look at that, my glass empty, how about I get another drink, baby, okay, I get it, you got fire burning, right there in your...
We know it's been a while since our last video, so for all you loyal subscribers, we're happy to let you know we're finally settled in our new home, and the new workshop is almost complete. Maybe you'd like to have a workshop tour video, who knows? Let me know in the comments. And with that said, hopefully you'll give this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and we'll definitely share our next video build with you. Thank you for watching.